My name is Joelle van Lent, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I work with many school districts in northern and middle part of Vermont, and I consult with this school district to support their work with students that have a variety of mental health or learning needs.
My name's Fellicia Cota, and I'm a board-certified art therapist contracted at the school.
So anxiety is basically a healthy human response working on overdrive. We all feel nervous when we have an upcoming experience, or we feel worried if we have a problem, or we have a loved one that is struggling in some way, or we might even feel scared about something bad happening, like getting sick. So those are all what we would consider to be healthy human emotions. And the goal of those emotions is to help us direct our attention, focus, and effort toward a potential problem or a threat, solve that problem, or kind of neutralize that threat, if you will. So anxiety means that you are doing that, but in an exaggerated way. So maybe you can't stop worrying to function and enjoy things or get things done. Or maybe you are very worried or feeling heart racing or stomach upset or the kind of physiological parts of worry. And you're feeling it to a degree that's exaggerated based on what the problem actually is. So a big reaction to a small problem, if you will. I think the most important thing when someone says they're anxious or has anxiety is to say there's nothing wrong with you. Your body is doing its job and your brain is doing its job to keep you safe and help you solve problems. It might just be doing it too well. The hallmark of anxiety is worry that's beyond the person's control. So that can be associated with things like feeling restless, keyed up, or on edge.
Headaches, stomach aches, trying to avoid certain situations or school altogether. Sometimes I have people who just feel overwhelmed and dizzy, sensations in their body, not really understanding, why it is the way that it is.
Being irritable, not being able to sleep, being tired even when you should be rested, loss of appetite, distraction, inability to focus, difficulty concentrating on a task, even one that you might enjoy. So sort of distracting thoughts. So there's like a thought part of it, which is the worry, excessive worry part. And then there's a physiological part, which can relate to sleep and concentration and heart rate and stomach issues.
Some children really struggle with getting out of bed and getting to school on a regular basis. They need that extra support. Some people are unable to make it to school and attend sessions, classes. So people trying to accommodate them. I know I personally have been able to work with people virtually, but that's not really an option for school. We've shifted back into the school model, so just difficulties getting here at times.
I think of kind of three frequent interferences with attendance. The first is sleep. And sleep is often disrupted by anxiety. And so when you can't sleep at night, you're sleeping during the day when you should be at school. And it's hard to wake up and function when you haven't slept at night. People can either be awake at night because they're worrying, they can be awake at night because they feel unsafe, whether or not there is an actual safety issue. Or they can actually feel safer awake at night because the stress that's causing their anxiety exists during waking hours. So the night can actually be a more comfortable time to be awake. So there's lots of reasons for that, but sleep disruption leads to attendance issues frequently. Another connected piece is sometimes the source of anxiety is at school, and one way that we often cope with anxiety is to avoid the experience that's anxiety provoking. That often makes it worse when that experience is actually something that's part of life or good for us. So we avoid it, and then we get in sort of an over-reliance on avoidance, which creates a snowball effect. Another thing is that people might not be able to concentrate on their schoolwork and get behind in their schoolwork, and then they feel overwhelmed and it feels like too much to face going back. So they'll just kind of maybe tomorrow, and then before you know it, it has become a situation that they feel is too big to overcome. And from the school's standpoint, we can always support a student wherever they are and make a plan for them to move forward. But lots of times when you're anxious, you're not reading how other people might respond well because of the nature of the anxiety. Routine regulates. Being on a predictable routine in terms of like awake sleep hours and the activity of your schedule. If you're on a predictable routine, your mental health and your anxiety tends to improve.
Regular attendance would create the opportunity to get back into that rhythm. And I think regular attendance is important, whether you have anxiety or not. The more you miss, the more anxious you can become because you're missing schoolwork, you're missing those social opportunities with students. So the idea of let's shift back to as much regular attendance is really important. In the moment, avoiding helps you in that moment, but it just prolongs and increases that anxiety feeling.
The social world is a source of anxiety for all kids. Even kids who are socially successful feel a lot of stress related to being social. You're still figuring out who you are. You're still learning how to be socially successful as you have conversations and interactions. You're learning how to read nonverbal cues and respond to them, when to tell a certain joke, when not to. All of the aspects of being social are something that's a huge part of their learning, so it's inherently stressful. So that whole element exists the whole time you're at school, while you're also learning a lot of academic information and building other skills. So avoiding that brings immediate relief because there's no demand. And so when you feel anxious about going, the anticipation of it, and you decide I'm not going today, you feel immediate and complete relief. But then in the long run, the anxiety gets worse. So often the very thing that you need to do to tackle the anxiety is to make yourself feel less comfortable in the immediate to feel more comfortable in the long run. That can be really hard for parents because when they're saying we are definitely going to school today, their child is going to get more distressed in the short run, but over time less anxious. If you say we're not going to school today, they're less distressed in the immediate, but over time, the anxiety wins, so to speak, and gets bigger.
Yes, and it can go back and forth. So one parent may have anxiety and then it increases anxiety within the student. It can affect the entire family.
Part of attendance is really we're building coping skills and an array of coping tools that person is going to use in all realms of their adult life. And so if we let avoidance be the main way we cope, you're indirectly communicating you're not capable. When you're anxious, you're not capable. And we don't want mental health to prevent students from access to education or any other part of life. And you're also not teaching other tools. So it can lead to problems with vocation and basically not being able to have all the experiences in life that kids deserve and should have.
I really encourage parents to create a schedule ahead of time, looking at the timeline of how long does it take to actually get up, get motivated, get out the door. You can even start it the night before. So choosing outfits the night before, making sure the backpacks are ready. If you're bringing a home lunch, get that packed the night before so that's less stress, less anxiety in the morning. Younger kids can often need that extra little comfort in the morning, and I encourage parents to factor in a little cuddle time or something that can give them a little bit of emotional support before having to shift and transition to the school setting.
So when you think about sleep, like we always, in terms of kids and teenagers, sort of treat sleep first. When there's a mental health issue like anxiety or depression, you always want to try to get sleep back in a healthy routine first. That can make a lot of things worse or better. So the general sleep habits are sleeping on a routine, not napping during the day because that makes being awake at night worse. And then things like screen time or technology, not for the hour before bed. And then no sugary or caffeinated foods second half of the day. And making sure you have a really soothing and predictable routine at night that does not involve blue light or the content of social media, which often can, we reach for it because we think it's going to be comforting, and it often does have nice connections, but it's an unpredictable world and it can trigger more anxiety unexpectedly.
There are a lot of strategies that you can use that look at different a different focus, like if it's a physical strategy, if it's a distraction strategy, if it's a comfort strategy. So distracting your mind sometimes can take your mind off of certain things. Moving your body, doing something active or physical, that can actually help decrease anxiety. And then the comfort piece, like if you know that physical touch, like hugs or snuggles or something like that is helpful, then that can help regulate a child too.
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is validate what they're feeling is real. Even if it's an exaggeration to what you think the actual situation warrants, what they're feeling is real. So I believe you, I hear you, you're feeling this way. Then you want to teach coping skills that don't overly rely on avoidance when what they're afraid of or anxious about is actually healthy and good for them. So a key strategy is something called worry time, where you schedule a time every day where the child or student is going to have the parent's full attention for about 10 minutes or less. You don't want to do this for more than 10 minutes. So you basically worry together as hard as you can for that whole time. And if worries come up during the day, you put them in a sort of parking lot for worry time. And then when worry time is done, the timer goes off, or you might walk the dog 2 times around the block. So it might be, you might worry while you do an activity that takes about 10 minutes, or you might actually set a timer. When it's done, you have a ritual that marks the end of it. So you can make a cup of tea, or you can go take a shower, or you can play a song, or play a game as a family. You do something every day when it's done. And then all of your attention is on distracting yourself from the worry. The worry has had full attention. Now you're in distraction. So that would be the time to watch like a really good movie or show that captures your attention, or read a book, or play a song, or do a project like a puzzle or cooking project or something that requires focus. And as the worry creeps back in, now you're putting it in a parking lot. You can actually write it down, or if the child needs you to, you can write it down for them, or you can teach that child to write it down, and you're saving it for the next worry time. So you're sort of teaching the brain, and you're strengthening the front part of the brain to say, not right now, there's a time for that, and allow the person to fully experience and focus on and enjoy what they're involved in. So when you do worry time once a day, typically in the evening, our experience shows that people sleep better, they can enjoy things that are supposed to be enjoyable more, and they can concentrate on things that they're trying to do more. For a lot of kids, it could be taking a drive so that you're not sitting and looking at each other. For some kids, it might look like we're sitting down and I'm giving you my full attention. During worry time, you are not solving problems. You are just putting words to worries. You're naming it and you're validating it. So your child might say, I'm worried that tomorrow nobody will want to sit with me at lunch. And then as a parent, you're saying, that would be really hard. Has that happened before? What do you think that would feel like? And you're not starting to pepper them with suggestions. Who could you sit with? An adult could help you. Has that ever happened before? Did that happen today? You're not asking a lot of questions to solve the problem or get more information. You're just hearing the worry and validating the worry. And if you think they say something that's unlikely to happen, you're not trying to diminish that right now either. You're just saying, thank you for telling me. That sounds really hard. What else? What else do you worry about? And you're just doing sort of a list of them. And if they wind down in 4 minutes, great. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes. That 10-minute is sort of like the cap. At that point, you got to pause it, and you're going to come back to it later. So parents and teachers are strongly aligning with the child against anxiety. So you're standing next to the child and you're facing anxiety. And lots of times, especially with younger kids, we'll have them draw a picture of what anxiety looks like or even name it. And then as we're in a moment where they're not wanting to do something that we want them to do or they need to do, we're saying we're not going to let anxiety win. It feels like anxiety is winning right now and preventing you from that experience. So it's not between you and the child, it's between you and the child and anxiety. So when you're doing worry time, you're saying, okay, that's enough. We've given worry our full attention and we're going to cap it now. And kind of work and strengthen our ability to distract and do other things. And you're really focusing on at that time, I have some ideas. Do you want my ideas? And the child might say no. And then you could say, okay, they're really good. So let me know if you want them later. But you're letting the child feel a sense of control, because a core aspect of anxiety is that you feel out of control. So you're taking control of the worry by giving it a time and your full attention, and then strengthening your ability to cap it. The other thing you can say is, what can we learn from this? Because sometimes you'll go over and over and over worry, which is what we call rumination, which is an anxiety feature. So ruminating means you just keep hamster wheeling it over and over again. So if you ask, what life lesson could be learned from this? Like what wisdom can we gain? And once you've gained that, your job is to let it go. We've learned from it, we're letting it go. And when it creeps up again, I already learned from that, I'm letting it go. And you have maybe sometimes a little saying like, we're stronger than anxiety together, or we've let that go now, or we've gained the wisdom that we can. Some little saying that the child can repeat to themselves when they're not with you and the anxiety has crept back in.
As an art therapist, art can be a really great non-threatening modality. So having art materials or anything creative that your student or child may gravitate toward can be super helpful. Even if it's just like something in their backpack or a place in the classroom where they know they can take a little break and just kind of self-regulate, those areas are really important.
We are attuned to our kids, and we have a lot of empathy for our kids. And what that means is that we are feeling what they're feeling. That's part of parenting. You have a nonverbal bond with your child and you feel what they feel. That is a really important thing that parents can do to understand what their kids need, especially when they're little babies and they can't tell us what they need in words. So by basically that empathic connection, feeling what the kid is feeling, you can figure out what they need and help them get those needs met. As they get older, it gets tricky because they might be feeling an emotion that's legitimately intense, and we want to validate what you're feeling is real, but it might not actually match the situation. So they might be afraid of going somewhere that they're going to enjoy when they get there because you've carefully selected it, they've been there before, and it always goes well. So as a parent, you are feeling that emotion and you're overriding it to lead them to an experience with support that is going to be good for them. So your behavior as a parent responds to what you've perceived the situation to be, not how your child is feeling. My child is in acute distress, so I'm keeping them home, is not always the right thing to do. My child is highly distressed, I'm going to support them, go with them, but I'm going to insist that we do this because the situation is actually not threatening. So it's confusing as a parent to know, should I be responding to how my child is feeling, or should I be responding to what I've decided is the benefit of this situation. As our kids get older, we don't know as much about their school world, for example. And I think that most kids come home and tell the truth as they're perceiving it. And they're feeling real feelings, and they're telling you how they felt the day went. And as the job of the parent is to figure out, have they accurately read the situation? Did they experience this in a way that other people also agreed? And then you're trying to navigate that, which gets really complicated, especially as kids get into middle and high school. That you're insisting on they go somewhere that they're saying they don't feel safe. The question is that true or not? Which is really tricky. I think of it like when toddlers are learning how to ride a tricycle, and they're in the driveway doing that, and you're watching, and they wipe out. And kids will stand up when they're 2 or 3 years old, and they will look at their parent before they have an emotional response. And the look on the parent's face tells them, am I badly hurt? Or am I brushing off and jumping back on? And that's kind of how it is as kids get older. They look to us to see how bad is this, and it's our job to say, you're okay, you can keep going, or no, we need to stop and get some help for you. And that's very complicated when it comes to anxiety. So that parent feeling like they don't know, that's where you're asking for help from the teachers and school counselors and pediatrician. and trusted family and friends, because a group of people can better help figure that out than any parent alone.
There's a couple students that I work with that really struggled with getting to school on time, and they would become dysregulated at home. Then they would shift eventually to school, but they'd be an hour or 2 hours late. And at that point, they'd missed important parts of their school day and instruction. And so then that just added to that anxiety. Over time, we were able to create like some incentives. When they were coming more regularly and they were getting that instruction time, their anxiety was decreasing in those core classes. So I think that was important for them, that they were getting the instruction that they needed, and it lessened their anxiety overall.
So I've been a psychologist for about 25 years, and I feel like every year of my career, I learn again how powerful anxiety is. You can't underestimate it. I also learn every year how good we are at treating it or responding to it. It's something that we know a lot about, and we have really great strategies, often called cognitive behavioral strategies, that we use to teach people how to put the healthy emotions of nervousness, worry, and fear back in the size that helps us function, doesn't get in our way of functioning. So those strategies are quite straightforward once you start working through them, such as worry time. That's an example of one. They're quite straightforward, and they're quite powerful when we do them repeatedly. And they do allow the person to regain a sense of control and appreciation for their brain and what it's doing. So psychotherapy is really important. I strongly encourage parents to participate in therapy with their children, even if it's some family sessions and some individual sessions, because what students are learning is strategies that they practice all week long in between the sessions. So what that looks like is people start to improve attendance, improve academic performance, enjoy things that are supposed to be enjoyable more, social connections increase. Their goals for their future start growing because they start seeing themselves as being capable of doing all kinds of things, rather than narrowing their world to make it feel less anxiety provoking. They start to broaden their world because they start to believe that they can do all of these things. So basic improvements are less irritable, more joyful in things that should be joyful, sleeping better, and more interested in engaging in new experiences.